I really thank you for being here today. This is like on my bucket list. This is on, like, believe it or not, this interview is on my career bucket list of things I wanted to do here. I didn't, again, like we've spoken before, I didn't have the privilege of, being one of your soldiers in any point in my career, because by the time I got here, you were already at a brigade. I think you were at the brigade level already, because I came in 2012.
2012, yeah, I was at the battalion level.
The battalion level. So we never crossed paths.
True.
But I heard so many wonderful things about Sergeant Major Cora, and so on and so forth. And I don't know if you remember, a few years back, I had alongside Colonel Dolan had the show called Open Door.
Yeah.
And we did that interview in Santiago. We put the chairs on the grass. I think I was a PFC back then, or a specialist. And man, it was a joy editing that video together. Like, I didn't cut anything out because everything was
Comenzando con. Yeah, that's right.
So that was that. I learned a lot about you, which was the point of the conversation. But me being an outsider at that point, I was like, I got to sit him down one day and talk with him personally. So thank you for being here.
Yeah,
this is an honor and a privilege for me, and I hope everyone out there will see this and be inspired. Who knows? So we're going to shoot the intro real quick, and then we'll begin our interview.
Awesome.
Welcome to Informal. This is where we sit down with the men and women of the Puerto Rico National Guard, learn their stories, and see what makes them tick, just to show the human side of the uniform. Today, it is my honor and privilege to have with me a former State Command Sergeant Major, Command Sergeant Major Luis Cora. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be interviewed, right, by one of our very own, our National Guard, our organization, and what you represent in the National Guard, which is telling our story. Letting our citizens, letting the people of the United States know what we do. So I appreciate it.
No, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're in this wrap up season right now because you're retiring soon, right? So thank you for taking the time and being here today with us.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about that, right? It was 40 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about looking back at these 40 years. What are some memories that you have that you'll take with you?
Excellent. Well, I think in the last 40 years, I break it down in decades. What I did my first 10 years, my second 10 years, my third 10 years, and my last 10 years. So I would say, to answer your question, I came in to the Guard looking for experience, military experience. And long and behold, this career, this job, this duty turned into something else, right? Turned into my full-time career. And that's not what I had intended to do. So I think, to answer your question, each decade had its own calling, if you will. But that first decade that I spent actually as a reservist, I really didn't take it serious. You know what I mean? I came in kind of a part-time soldier, breaking away from what I was doing in my civilian life. I was a salesman. I was selling cars back then. And, I got to hang up my suit and tie and hang out with my buddies, Back in New Hampshire when I joined the National Guard, we would always travel every year to Fort Drum. And traveling meant driving 24 hours from New Hampshire, upstate. We'd sleep over in Burlington, Vermont, and we would arrive in upstate New York, Watertown. And it was party time. It was party time for me. It was getting out, doing tactical things. I was a field artillery. And as a field artillery cannoneer, I felt that it was so different from the reason why I came in. I originally wanted to become a state trooper in our state, and they weren't going to select a scrawny, no military experience guy like me. So that's one of the reasons, that was one of my motivators as to why I was in. But when I came in, everything changed. I realized that we were in the midst of the Cold War, and it was, it was real.
Yeah.
It was a real war. It was just mental. It was preparedness. We call today readiness, but back then it was all about preparedness. And I was single. I wasn't married. I was just living one day at a time. I was living the wild life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know how it is in the States, right?
I do.
I mean, just no purpose in life, just wherever the world
Just go wherever the wind blows.
Correct. That's where I would end up and make the best of it. So my first decade, I spent doing much of that. I traveled to Canada, again, Watertown, New York. I just mentioned that because it was just a crazy time. And just hanging around with my buddies. But you know, one of the things I take away from that first decade, my daughter's godfather is a buddy of mine from the Guard that I met as an E4, who played a joke on me one time. You know, I was a private. I started as an E1, and when I came back from basic and AIT, he was the radio operator, and he calls me to the back of the truck. We had deuce and a half back then. I know you don't know what that is, but
I have no idea.
Similar to a 5-tongue, right?
Okay.
And he calls me to the back. He says, "Hey, Cora, go over to gun 3 and tell him to do it." And I looked at him like, "Do it? Do what?" And he says, "Never mind asking, just
Tell him to do it.
execute," right? So I started walking, and he yells over to me, "And double time." So I started double timing with my gear, helmet, I mean, you name it. When I got over to gun 3, out of breath, running out of air, I said, "Hey," gun 2 said to just do it. He looked at me and said the same thing. He said, "Do what?" And I said, "I don't know. He just told me to come over and tell you to just do it." And when I turn around to point to gun 2, he was sitting in the back of the tailgate, kind of reeling me in like, "You little fish."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's my daughter's godfather. That's how close and intimate we became.
Yeah.
You know? So I think I take that away from that first decade, just building relationships with my friends, my buddies who served, left the Guard, and I continued here for 40 years.
So when would you say was the time period where you went from not taking it so seriously to, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take it seriously?
Okay. Yeah, I think that was my second decade. Yeah, when I left the New Hampshire Guard in '92. I arrived here in Puerto Rico in '93, and back then they were running through the elections. Just recently named a new governor, Honorable Pedro Rosselló, and he sent the National Guard to all the housing projects. All right.
Oh, that was the Mano Dura mission.
Right, the Mano Dura mission, and I put my business aside because I actually ended up in Puerto Rico because this entertainment company from New Hampshire called Happy House Amusement had these slot machines, fruit machines, poker machines.
Yeah.
And I became a salesman for them, and that's how I ended up in Puerto Rico. But long and behold, the government put a hold on all that sector, and I became more involved with the Guard. So I reported to Ato Rey as an artillery man, right? Those were the artillery units that they had here in Puerto Rico. And then I became very active in Mano Dura, working 12-hour shifts. Having fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was crazy and wild being in the streets of Puerto Rico with an armed M16 in my hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been done since then.
No, it hasn't. And I mean, it's like going into a war zone. But it wasn't a war zone. These are our own people.
Yeah.
You know? But that was the front. That was our part. Being able to assist the local police. And by the way, I never mentioned, but originally I joined the Guard because I wanted to become a state trooper, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to really be an MP, so I could have the experience. But all that went by the wayside. I ended up with an M16 here in Puerto Rico, pulling duty at night. I had the graveyard shift.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I thought it was cooler at night. It was quieter at night. I liked the night shift,
Okay.
better than the day shift. I did both for a while, but I did that for about a whole year, and that's when I started getting serious in the Guard. And at the same time, in Atorrey, the 2nd Battalion Field Artillery, they said, you know what? You need to go to our military schoolhouse and become an instructor. And I'd say, I would love to do that. And that's how I ended up at Fort Allen. I went to the RDI to take the Battle Focus Instructor Training course. And that started my whole drill sergeant and instructor career.
Yeah, that's what I've heard people talk about most. Yeah, First Sergeant Cora, he was there at the language center when I was there. Yeah, like that's like a few generations of soldiers that you've, had a direct hand in. Because I've talked with either like who are now like senior NCOs,
yeah.
some are
Colonels.
officers, correct? Yeah, that all went to the language center and said, yeah, First Sergeant Cora, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that was, First Sergeant was in my 3rd decade. But that first, or that 2nd decade, and during the 90s, early 2000s, I was drill sergeant at the language center, living it up, and if they only knew that wasn't really me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I put on that brown round, when I put the drill sergeant hat on, it was lights, camera, action. I was putting on a show, but that wasn't really me. But I grew into that monster. I grew into that feared drill sergeant. I just played the role. But if they only knew that deep down inside, I had nothing to do with that role. You know what I mean? But it was all about learning English, and that was the mission. And I knew that the only way that you could graduate from the language center was passing the language test. Everything else didn't really mean much. I mean, if you didn't know how to march, it didn't matter. If you didn't understand military commands, it didn't matter. What did matter was you passing that English test, and that's what I focused on. And it became a game. It was kind of like a cat and mouse game. I wanted to catch you speaking Spanish. I could watch you at a distance, and I say, your English, it doesn't, your lips don't move that fast when you speak English. You know what I mean?
You're not that fluent.
Correct. And you know what? I'm in doubt. Just drop. And it just became, I was just having fun with the soldiers. And at the same time, I always had in the back of my mind being fair and just. I treated every soldier the same way. When I said something, I complied with it. But deep down inside, we're there trying to save as many soldiers as we could from a lot of things. You would think it would be just save them so that they could comply with their military career, reach their goals and dreams, right? But we also saved many from the life they lived outside the Guard, outside the language center. I could recall many soldiers who didn't have a home or were living with friends. This is the only thing they have. Others that quit school, got a GED and managed to pass the ASVAB. Others that were in college and single mom couldn't afford the bill anymore for their education and joined the Guard. And others that came in with that mentality of the streets and that we had to clean them up, you know what I mean? Brush them up and make them look like a soldier. One story, and he may end up hearing this interview, but I'm going to save his name, but he knows who he is. I remember calling him into my office one morning, and I said, "Hey, Private, I don't know where you come from, but you can't walk around here con ese tumbao." You know what I mean? With that hip walk.
Yeah.
I said that doesn't square with our uniform. You need to look, speak, and walk like a professional, like a soldier, like a warrior. So I said, I'm going to help you out. You know what I mean? I'm going to help you out. Talk to me about yourself. Well, when he told me his story, struggling with his family, his mom, trying to be someone in this life. I mean, for me, that became kind of like my mission to make sure this kid graduated. And I was always on him. But we cleaned him up. That soldier, when he went to basic training, became the honor graduate. He said, I clean floors like no one else. You know, he had all the duties and he did it with just this heart of, I want, whatever I have to do, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it well. And he would write to me, when active duty, he would write to me on occasions and let me know where he was at in the world and how grateful he was for that experience at the Language Center.
Would you say that your time in the Language Center kind of shifted your focus on taking care of the member, of, you know, actually maybe started you on that path of, my job is to take care of people? Would you say that that's what started it, maybe, that Language Center?
Yeah, actually, you know what started it at the Language Center? That shift that you're talking about, that human side, that factor, that inner me. When back in '92, the Army introduced the Army values. And no one really had a POI, program of instruction, to kind of gear a drill sergeant to teach values. And I took it upon myself to do a little research. And I realized that the Army values were Jordanian Christian values, that it was more profound than what we had in the surface. And I decided to teach the Army values at the Language Center. And believe it or not, I had to prepare myself to teach someone, to inculcate values. How do you inculcate values to someone who already walks into your organization with their own set of values? How do you take a group of a platoon size of soldiers or civilians, right? Because they're in that transition, right? How do you group them all to think on one set of values? And I think that's where it clicked for me. I had to walk the talk. I couldn't just stand in front of the classroom and talk about loyalty and duty and respect and selfless service and integrity and personal courage. I couldn't do those things if I wasn't demonstrating them myself.
Right.
And I think that's really where I shifted and really analyzed my own values. Hey, are my values aligned with the Army values?
Correct.
You know? And that became my whole purpose while at the Language Center. Ensuring that what the soldiers were expecting of us and what we demanded of them mirrored what we were doing. And that meant cleaning up our speech. That meant treating soldiers with that dignity and respect that we're talking about.
Right.
So I think, you know, to answer your question, the human aspect began when the Army values came around, back around 92, 93, really introduced into the Army around 95, 96. You know, we had videotapes. You can kind of get the essence, but to be able to stand in front of the classroom and really preach and talk values really took someone to really analyze themselves and do an azimuth check on their own values.
So now, back in our previous episode, you said something about, it was like you were asked how your day started.
Right.
And you said your day started with prayer.
Correct.
But then you said something interesting. Well, you said something, where you started doing this thing where you used to divide your day on 1 hour slots.
Correct.
Then 30-minute slots. And then you ended up in 15-minute slots.
Yeah.
Did you continue with the 15-minute slots?
Actually, I didn't.
No, it's 5-minute slots.
Yeah. That would be the pattern, but I did not. You know, going back to what you said and how I ended up in that 15-minute bracket, because there was just so much to do, right? I had a soldier, a private, that walked into my office one day. You know, I couldn't, for the face of me, tell you his last name. You know, we all go by last names.
Yeah.
There's no way I would remember your first name. But with this private, I remember his first name, Rafael. I couldn't remember his last name for days of me, I wouldn't be able to tell you. He walked into my office one day with this bold authority. And I'm looking at him like, who are you to just barge in my office and have a seat in that chair without me saying, sit down.
down.
You know what I mean? Usually you stand in front of my desk and you stand at ease. This private came in, sit down, and I'm looking at him like, this better be good. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, I came to bring you a message from God. And I said, you came here to give me a message from God? He said, yes. He said, I came to tell you to look for a church and seek God. And I'm giving you this gift. Gave me a gift. It was a book called Purpose Driven Life, written by Rick Warren. 40 days, 40 chapters. And you kind of meditate after each day on that teaching.
Yeah.
That became my favorite book. I complied with the 40 days because I just felt the way he walked in that it was just something, right?
He walked in with authority.
Something about that private. That private never graduated. That private transferred to Florida. Never heard and seen again. I mean, I couldn't tell you for the face of me who he was. But I complied. Well, between that, the Army Value class, that's why my day starts with prayer. I did as I was told, and we found a church. By then, I had a daughter, and we wanted to bring her up right with the Christian values, and that's what started off my Christian walk with Christ. And today I can say, in the last decade, my fourth decade here in the Guard, that a lot of people that don't know me would probably think back of my drill sergeant days. But the people who know me now, the people who know Luis Cora, would say, no, you know what? That man is all into faith. He's a Christian, faith follower of God. He walks the Christian life. You know what I mean?
So I read in your bio and the phrase servant leadership.
Yes.
So is that where this comes in now, of being a servant leader?
Yes, absolutely.
Speak a bit. Tell the folks out there, what is a servant leader?
Okay. Well, I would say that I don't call it by chance. I call it by divine purpose, that I ended up serving in an organization that serves, right? Usually you hear the expression, he joined the service, right? He joined the military. Mm-hmm. Well, I joined the service, and this has been a teaching for me for the last 40 years of how to serve on all plateaus, on all dimensions of life. Not just serving privates, soldiers, civilians coming into the Guard. I served in the Family Readiness Group. I served in the youth program. I served at the middle management, right? E5, E6. I got to serve lieutenants going through the OCS program at the RTI. I got to serve senior leaders. I got to serve the State Guard. We gave courses to the State Guard. I got to serve practically on all plateaus. I even was a member of the strategic committee here for the Puerto Rico National Guard. Thanks to Colonel Soto, who ensured that I was involved in everything he did. I followed in his footsteps in that respect. But I got to really understand what serving others meant at all echelons of the military. So going back to servant leadership is when you take yourself out of the equation and the only focus on your mind is serving others. When you can serve someone and that person can't pay you back, that's true servant leadership. The leadership comes by you being the role model. The servant leadership is the fact that others see in you that wholeness, that genuine sense of serving without expecting anything in return. I'm not doing it in we say in Spanish, but for my own self-glory or for my own self-pride. It's not about the pride. It's not for me, going up the ladder. It's just genuine. I care about this person. I want to help this person reach their objectives, their dreams, their goals. So that servant leadership, this organization helped me really tune in to really what service is all about. And not just here in the organization, but at home. Not just at home, but at the church. I always, when I give the Bible classes, I always talk to the congregation about the 3 U's. The 3 U's. You are 3. You are the public you, right? Public you is what everyone has this perspective of who Josh is. It's the public you. And you ensure that that public you is you in front of everyone else. Then the second you is the family you. And perhaps that public you and who you are at home are 2 different people. You're just different at home. You let your hair down. You can be you. You can explode easily, right? It's just the family you. Only the family knows that side of you. And then there's the third you, which is the most dangerous one, the private you. And the private you is the one where you're home alone. No one else. There's no public. There's no family. There's no witnesses. What do you do in your own private you when you are in your own private time? That's the real you. You know, if you are tempted to do something that you know is wrong, you're going to do it when you're in your private time. So this really kind of touches the surface of your integrity. Your integrity really starts with the private you. If you can't control yourself during your private time, you're only fooling your family and you're fooling the public, because the image that you're projecting is not the real you. So I think that, you know, going back to the servant leadership starts with that private you. That private you needs to be you serving yourself. When you make yourself a commitment that, you know what, I'm going to start dieting tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to start running. And tomorrow comes and you find an excuse for yourself to say, well, you know what, I'll start next week.
I'll start next week.
My schedule's too busy, right?
Yeah.
Or something came up. But really, if you can keep that word, that commitment to yourself, it's easy for you to keep the commitment with your family and others. But it starts with you.
I think that's a very important message to put out there. That's servant leadership, because many times it's the other way around. I'm in a certain position. I've been here for X amount of time. I deserve a certain level of respect or whatever. But when you really take the time to know your people and take care of them, it'll return to you.
I agree.
Tenfold.
I agree. I just wanted to add one more thing to that. What you just mentioned. When you're looking for, or the purpose of you serving really is to serve yourself, I think that's when we have our downfalls. I think you were alluding to the fact of rank has its privileges, right? Yeah, it might have its privileges, but you know what? That's not why I'm serving. It's not about the privilege of my rank. It's not about the privilege of of my position. It's about the individual that's in front of me. Earlier, I had mentioned during my first decade, those relationships that were really built during that first phase of my career. You know, those are the ones I leave with after 40 years. My buddy, Jack, that's his name, by the way, Jack Lampert, called me, saw the ceremony. He's on his way here to Puerto Rico to come visit us. But, it's those relationships that we walk away from after, 4 decades of serving. So, and one other thing to close the loop earlier when you mentioned about the 15, 30, 1 hour segment, I come to realize that, as you move up in your position and your authority and your responsibilities, that even though you try to manage your schedule by being organized and saying, you know what, I'm going to schedule everything in every 30 minutes. Well, I can be more productive if I just schedule everything in every 15 minutes. I can get more things done in an hour than if I do things on an hourly basis. But when it comes to really serving others, it's about building a relationship. There is no time. There is no time hack. It's when the person calls on you. It's when the person knocks at your door. It's when the person calls you. It's when the person sends you the text and is asking you that question, that hand, that, hey, I need of you right now. It's you putting everything aside to really kind of cater to that person. So, the 15, 30, 1 hour, great if you're structured, working behind the scenes. But when it's time to serve people, there is no time hack. It's
I've had the experience of, maybe somebody calls you and then starts with a harmless question.
Yeah.
What would be a 15-minute conversation. Then once you get into the conversation and you find out the need of the person and what's really going on behind the scenes, it turns into a 1 hour, 2 hour conversation.
It's true.
Because you need to make sure that when that conversation is done, at least there's some glimmer of hope for that person on the other side.
Absolutely.
So I totally understand why it's, maybe it's a 15-minute bracket, but if we have to be open to break it.
Correct.
And maybe push some things to the side. Which brings me to my next question. Where does "it's all about the heart" come from?
Yes, awesome. Es un asunto del corazón. It's all about the heart, right? I actually captured that during my first AT when I was the State Command Sergeant Major. When I first came in, I was looking because every year as a CSM, I tried to find a motto that would kind of drive me for that year. And when I first started as a State Command Sergeant Major, my motto, I don't know if you remember, the signature block on the bottom said, "Lead humbly." And it was all about that. I wanted to remember, I wanted not to forget that I'm in this position, but I got to continue to stay humble. And I didn't want the position to kind of override who Luis Cora is.
Yes.
Excuse me. So that became kind of my first year, lead humbly, and it was a reminder for me. But my second year, I was at the annual training, and during that annual training, you at one point stand up in front of the AT brigade that's in the middle of their AT period, and you would have to give them your welcoming remarks. And during those welcoming remarks, I had mentioned something because I saw a poster from Recruiting and Retention, and on one of those slogans, it said it's a decision of the heart or something along that line. And I said, you know what? Everything we do here on AT is about the heart. There's many people that are supposed to be here today. They're not here because their heart's not in it. Excuse me. So really this, it's all about the heart. I realized that, hey, wait a minute. It's not just about the heart at work. It's about the heart at home. And it's about the heart at my church. And, being a faith follower of Christ, God is the only one that really knows our true heart. So that really kind of put my thought together of coming up with, it's all about the heart, because no matter what you do during the course of the day, no matter where you're at during the course of the day, all the decisions that you make during the course of the day, you might think about it in your brain and in your mind, but really it goes down to the heart before you give the answer. The word says, from the mouth speaks the heart. And I'm a true believer of that. Mm-hmm. You can listen to a person speak, and really what's coming out of their mouth is really what they have in their hearts. So I kind of felt like that really encompassed what our organization's all about. We serve as volunteers in the armed forces, right?
Yeah.
We weren't twisted. I remember asking that to the privates. Who was forced to be here? Who's obligated to join the National Guard? No one could raise their hand, right? Because this is an all-volunteer force. Every once in a while you have someone who say, well, I was on my way to prison, And the judge said the military or prison, so I picked the military.
You still made a choice.
You still made a choice, right? Exactly. You still had a choice. But the fact is that you're here because your heart wants to serve. Your heart wants to be a part of something else. Your heart wants to really kind of answer your calling. And if that calling is serving others, well, you do it through the National Guard in this case, right? You serve your community, you serve your country, you serve your nation, you serve your people. You know, what better organization to serve the people where you live than the Army National Guard? So all about the heart is exactly all of that. It doesn't matter where you find yourself in your life, what period of your life you find yourself in. It could be that you're going through some struggles in your life, some challenging times, some afflictions, which we all do, right? Really, when you're tested that way, that's when your heart grows. Your heart grows through those periods of challenges. And in the Guard, you're going to have your periods of challenges, right? You're going to have your periods of deployment and separation from your family, from your community, from your homeland, right? Those could be some challenging, struggling times. But the fact is, you overcoming them. It's all about the heart. I think about it as one of the big topics in the military, which is resiliency. Mm-hmm. And, we talk about resiliency. How is it possible that two soldiers can go to combat, come back, and one can be messed up and the other one could be just fine, right? And it's all about the heart. It's the heart that made the difference in each one of those individuals, exposed to the same thing, exposed to the same challenges, but two people with two different hearts. So I'm a big believer that motto of it's all about the heart. It's all about the inner you. I could go back to the 3 U's and say, yeah, right. It's all about the heart. It's the heart in each one of us as individuals, the public, the private, and the family you, right? So that's in essence where it comes from.
So as we wrap this up, what's next for Luis Cora?
What's next?
What's next?
Well, I say that what's next was really why I came into the Guard. I honestly think that if I would have stayed in the United States, told you I was having fun, living the wildlife.
Yeah.
I would have continued having fun, living the wildlife with no purpose. I felt that the reason why I ended up in Puerto Rico was for that private walking into my office to give me direction, to give me the instructions. It wasn't the Bible. It was a book that guided me to the Bible and kept me on that track for the next 30 years. Because I spent 30 years here in Puerto Rico. Yeah. And I would have bared off. I know I would have bared off if I would have stayed back in New Hampshire. So I think that part of the reason why I made it to the 40-year mark is also part of the calling. There's something special about 40. I tried to leave this organization a couple years back. For some particular reason, I couldn't leave. Someone kept reaching out and saying, no, I got another mission for you. No, I have one more mission for you. And I'm thinking, but I've already complied. I'm at 35, 36 years. I'm ready to head out. I got one more mission for you. Well, that mission was, I think, from God. To be able to have the privilege of serving as the senior enlisted leader for this organization, representing all our enlisted, all our non-commissioned officers, to me was a real privilege and honor. And to be able to reach the 40-year mark from this position gave me a whole new perspective. I remember one day walking through the hallway in the TAG's office, thinking to myself, I used to come in early sometimes. I would even beat sometimes General Cruz.
And he got here really early.
And he got here, exactly. He got here really early. But one of those mornings, I remember reflecting in that hallway, looking at the TAG's office. He's got these 2 wooden doors with the state seal. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, that state seal is the Lamb of God over the Bible.
Over the Bible, yeah.
With the 7 seals hanging. By the way, that's what's on my coin. And I'm going to present you with my coin today.
Thank you.
But I remember reflecting for that moment thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I in this position? And I really felt that, God spoke to me at that moment thinking, I put you there. I put you there to reach your 40-year mark. Because I got something special for you. And that special is this new beginning now. Serving God full time. Not, I always place God first. If I committed to something at my church, people here wouldn't know it. But sometimes I move things in my agenda so I could comply with what God was asking me to do.
Yeah.
Because to me, God was first. But people here didn't know that. But now, God's saying, you've been faithful. Now it's time for you to be faithful 24/7.
Yeah.
And I want to continue serving, not just the Puerto Rico Army National Guard. I want to be able to touch every soldier in the Guard. Because I think you said something important earlier. We wear this uniform, but under that uniform, there's a human being. A human being that needs, a human being that's in search of, a human being that's kind of looking to identify themselves, a human being who's looking for some purpose and some meaning in their life. I want soldiers to know, and I yell this out, if you're that person who's looking for someone to speak to, who's looking for that meaning and purpose in your life, reach out to me. I'm leaving here, but I'm a phone call away. I'm in Juana Diaz. Reach out to me. I will gladly have a conversation with you and try to help you, to guide you in that meaningful, purposeful way. On December 1st, I'm launching my new virtual ministry exclusively for my family. And I say for my family because now I look at my family and I say, wow, my father, there's 12 brothers and sisters. With my mom, it was 6 or 7. I have 2 sisters and my wife, and I have a new granddaughter, all women, by the way. But I feel that I need to start with them first. So I'm going to start with them first. So to answer your question, what am I doing when I leave here? This all started back when I joined the Guard. It was God's intention to have me here for 40 years. It was God's intention to have me teach the Army values, to mold civilians into warriors. I actually got to learn how to work with people's characters during that tenure at the Language Center, but now I'm doing it with a different perspective. Now it's the character of Christ. Now it's teaching someone, taking the message of Christ to someone who hasn't been exposed to him or her. And, we've all been commissioned. Commissioned meaning it's a mission for a group of us, right? It's a shared mission. It's a commission. We've all been commissioned to take the good news to everyone. And that's what I intend to do now, is take the good news to everyone. So just yesterday I was at Cabo Rojo. We're planning a Veterans Day event on 11 November, which is this year. The state event is in Cabo Rojo. And at the end, we had already said goodbye. We were ready to leave. And someone said, the El Procurador de Veterano was there with us. And he said, so what are you going to do now? And I said, I already know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to serve the Lord full time. He says, you're kidding. I said, no, that's what I'm doing. I finished my master's degree in theology and pastoral counseling. And I mean, you name it. I've been preparing myself for this moment. And he says, well, maybe you can do the benediction at the ceremony. So I think that calling is there. Obviously, I wouldn't turn that down. And again, anywhere I can, to all the great women and men of this organization, all our civilians that serve in this organization, I open my doors to say, hey, you got an invitation to reach out to me. I want to continue forming your character, not just with the Army values, but with the Christian values. That's my quest from here on down. And I close by saying, it's all about the heart.
It's all about the heart.
It's all about the heart.
One final question, and this is more of a, let's just join me on this journey. If you could go back to 1983, and you have Luisito there standing in the buddy platoon, maybe questioning, what am I doing here? What would you say to him?
I would probably tell that young man, Private Cora, I don't know why you're joining the National Guard, but I can tell you that from here, you can go anywhere you want in the world. This is your point of origin. Where you choose to end up, you write. So here's a book, here's a pen, write down the chapters, and make sure you put the final chapter of where you want to end up in this great career, the Army National Guard, or serving your country in uniform. That's what I would tell that private. Had I known what I know now, that's probably the way I would have looked at it.
Is there anything you would like to say before we leave?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to speak to you. This interview has been a great experience, reflecting on these 4 decades of service. I enjoy what you do because you're taking our message to the people of Puerto Rico. And I can only hope que lo que nos están escuchando, the ones that are listening to this interview, to know that serving as a part-time soldier means you get to serve 2 careers. What you want to do in your civilian sector and what you want to do for your country or do for the island of Puerto Rico. So I think that this is a great opportunity. Only the few, right? Only the elected get to make it into the kingdom of God. Well, same here. Only the few and those that qualify come in, and we will mold you. We will do the rest to make sure you serve your country well.
Well, thank you, CSM Cora, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, and this is it for this month's Informal. We'll see you next month. Bye.
Gracias.